So especially the BOF slag is a basic oxygen furnace slag. BOF slag is used as a fill material in soil, so it contains some heavy metals and fluorine, and which may contain this environment, soil environment. So we need to figure out. How much contaminants, potential contaminants are contained in the slag, and we also need to figure out the long-term leaching behavior of such compounds. And we also want to know the potential risk posed by the slag and its leachate. Some statistics about the slag. In Korea, the BOF slag is used mostly as a road base and fill material. The process reuse is recycle of the material into the same process, steel making process. So this material cannot go into the environment. So the material, fill material is used as a kind of a soil in the environment. So we're concerned about such kind of reuse. International comparison in the US or in the European countries, there's little fill material uses. But in Korea and Japan, you can see there are still a lot of fill material uses with BOF slag. There are many kinds of slags, steel-making slags available, but today I'm talking about the basic oxygen furnace slag, BOF, not the others. For example, blast furnace slag is a very good material for cement industry, and the electric arc furnace slags are, in my opinion, not good for soil reuse. So I'm talking about BOF slag as a soil constituent. I performed 4 leaching tests from Korean standards and 2 American standards, including ASTM, and 1 European leaching test. Each has different LS ratio and leaching conditions, but every method, the old method doesn't release any significant amount of heavy metals or fluorine to the leaching solution, except for the pH. As you know, the slag pH is very high. It's very alkaline material due to its carbon oxide, calcium oxide. But except for the pH, the materials released in the leaching solution is insignificant. But detection frequency, in terms of frequency, for fluorine, all samples release the fluorine, and for zinc, 6 out of 9 samples released. Apart from the leaching test, when the material is the BOF slag is used as a fill material in soil, we need to apply the Soil Act in Korea. So the material needs to comply with the Korean soil standards. Legally in Korea, the concentration of inorganics in soil is determined by total digestion of the material. And I tested about 38 samples of BOF slags, and the distribution of fluorine or fluoride looks like in the figure, and it has a highest concentration of about 10,000, but mostly the average concentration was about 2,000 or 3,000. And for zinc, all samples contains zinc, and it produces zinc as a main constituent, and the average was about 65. So next, I'd like to know the chemical forms of each heavy metals or fluoride in the slag. So I performed the sequential extraction test. There are many sequential extraction methods available in scientific field, but I used two of them. First one is a Tessier's method, firstly developed for the cations, so usually heavy metals. And I also use Wenger's method developed for oxygen ions such as fluorine or fluoride or arsenic. And as you see in this figure, based on the Tessier's method, most are considered as a residual fraction. And by the Wenger method, most are present as oxide forms or residual forms, which means the fluorine or zinc are present in the slag as a non-labile or less labile forms. And I also performed some analysis like XRD or XPS to confirm such chemical forms in slag. And XRD graph shows the presence of cuspidine and fluorite in the slag. Fluorite is an original mineral, calcium fluoride, and cuspidine is a secondary mineral produced from the fluorite. And also XPS data confirms the presence of cuspidine and fluorite, yielding the binding energy corresponding to the two minerals. And up to these results, we can see that the fluorine or fluoride or zinc in slag, BOF slag, does not have some adverse effect on the environment in terms of regulation. But once the materials are used as a field material in soil, the site receives rainfalls continuously for a long time, and thus leaching behaviors may change. So we need to predict, or we need to look at the long-term effect of such leaching behavior. So we use the population-controlled scenario, which means the inorganics from the slag are leached from the water filled with the pore space in soil or in the aggregates. So the population-controlled scenario assumes that exponential decrease of such leaching behavior of each compounds, the kappa value in this equation. So the major parameters for the population control scenario prediction, the most important one is rate of leaching kappa. It's determined with the slag that we reused. And in this case, I use a Canberra reactor slag with about 10,000 milligram of fluoride per kilogram of slag. And also, we need to know the infiltration rate of the site where we used. The Korean default value for the infiltration rate was about 49 centimeter per year. And the depth of filling, the land use is about 4 meters, was assumed. And I predicted for 100 years. So from the column experiment, the maximum leaching concentration of fluoride from the slag was about 900, and the kappa value was about 0.37. And Dutch government provides some default values for the kappa values, including fluorine and some heavy metals. And as you see here, the kappa value that I derived in this experiment was about the highest. Prediction results, fluorine concentration and slag leachate decreased as expected with time from 150 to about 30 milligram per liter. And also fluorine concentration leached from the slag decreased from about 16 milligram per kilogram to 3. And as a consequence, the cumulative fluorine concentration reached from the slag, expressed in milligram per kilogram slag, increased, but it seems like to saturate with time. So remember, the initial concentration of fluoride is about 9,920 milligram per kilogram, and after 100 years of prediction, if we assume that 1 meter field depth, the fluoride concentration reached about 767. This shows a little more practical numbers about the long-term leaching. So if we assume, or if we project the 100-year accumulation of fluoride reached from the slag applied site, which means the dimension is expressed as a gram fluoride per square meter of the site applied, reused. And the cumulative increase was observed, but it's not linear. So when 1 meter of field depth, about 1,400 fluoride was leached from the site per square meter. But when you fill the 10 meters as a field depth, about 2,800, so about double. So the cumulative behavior is not linear, it's saturated kinetics. Also, we need to know about the environmental impact of such slag. We did some column experiment. The accumulation in soil beneath the slag, under the slag layer, we observed the slag, the accumulation of fluoride about 355, whereas the original soil has about 235. Also, you see the fluoride concentration changes in the leachate, and the original soil has some fluoride, about 1 or 2 milligram per liter, and the slag layer released the fluoride, about 7, and slag and soil layer leachate produces about 2 or 3 milligram per liter of fluoride, which means the fluorides, the remainings, in soil, accumulated in soil. So also pH was changed. The original slag pH was about 13.4, and soil pH was about 6.27, and the slag affected soil pH was about 8 or a little higher than that, which means this can be viewed in two aspects. Some can say that soil has some buffering capacity to reduce the pH, but in other standpoint of view, soil receives a lot of hydroxyl radicals to reduce the pH. So it has, some conflict view. And also, we tested some toxicity experiments, whether the slag leachate affected the soil. Soil poses some toxicity to plants or earthworm. And in this case, plant toxicity test, in case of a mustard, there's no significant difference between the two samples. But in tomato, there is a significant difference. In terms of germination rate and growth length, the slag affected soil shows a little decrease in germination rate and growth length. In terms of earthworm toxicity, we used 30 counts, 30 earthworms for this test, and about 2 or 3 earthworms were dead, while others are still survivor. So no significant difference statistically. And in terms of a microbial toxicity, we did the enzymatic activity test, and we tested 2 methods: acid phosphatase activity and dehydrogenase activity. And compared to the original soil, the activity decreased about by half in leachate affected soil, which means at least from this experiment, the soil microbes seem to be the most affected by the slag. And also we performed the pyrosequencing, meaning the metagenomic analysis of the soil microflora by using the DNA technique. And among the top 10 microbial species in the original soil, only 3 left in the slag-affected soil, which means 7 disappeared during the experimental period. It's about 100-year simulation. And mostly the bacillus thermotolerance, the population increased from 2.2 to 11.6%. So this clearly shows the structure of microbial community changed with the slag leachate. What about the function? We didn't test any function experiment except for the enzymatic activity. So this needs to be further investigated. But the diversity also changed. The Shannon index, Simpson index, and OTUs are the indices showing the microbial diversity commonly used by microbiologists. And as you see here, the diversity also changed, a little decreased by the slag leachate. A summary, in terms of regulational purpose, I think the BOF slag and its constituents like fluorine or heavy metals doesn't have any problem. However, fluoride concentration in the regulation in Korea is very strict compared to its toxicity. So its fluorine concentration exceeded the Korean standard. And our experiment shows the 5-step sequential extraction data. So fluorine or fluoride is present as a labile or none or less labile forms. And XRD XPS analysis shows that they are minerals, which means they are not leachable, and which means they are not bioavailable. Long-term prediction shows that the fluoride, about 8% of the total, can be released when 1 meter field was applied for 100 years. And leaching of other heavy metals may not be significant. And here the toxicity test results shows that there seems to be some effects, some adverse effects by the slag leachate, but the data shows, and I don't think it's from the heavy metals or fluorine leached from the slag. Instead, it is because the alkaline pH of the leachate is about 12 or 13, but this needs to be further investigated. But from this study, our current conclusion is the problem of pH from this slag, not the some heavy metals or fluorine compounds. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the lecture. Any questions? Okay. Do you have?
Thank you for your talk. You said you're going to further study about pH. And you look at the data about fluoride or fluorine, whatever you say. In slag, when you applied to soil, more fluoride, and at the same time pH decreased. Does that have something to do with pKa value of hydrogen fluoride So fluoride could be retained more in soil due to pH decrease from about pretty much alkaline to about pretty much neutral.
Fluoride is released from a slag, assuming that the fluoride is released from slag into soil, and the soil pH is above 7 or something like around that, the fluoride can present as a calcium fluoride, CaF2, in that pH range. So it's a kind of precipitate. So fluoride itself, when its pH is above 6 or 7, does not pose some problem in the environment. That's our tentative conclusion. But the problem is pH. That's so far our conclusion. Yeah.